morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
He's a longtime cowboy, rancher, outfitter, and a heck of a good singer and songwriter. For many years, he was the manager of Michael Martin Murphy's New Mexico ranch, and he's got an endless reservoir of real-life adventure stories.
2 jumps on the saddle horn before I was thrown clear over his head. Landed out there in the arena, felt every vertebrae in my back crinkle all the way up, and then he was so mad he was going to try to stomp on me.
Not his team roping partner, but his horse. You'll hear a wide-ranging conversation with his great cowboy and entertainer Fred Hargrove today. And of course, Baxter Black has another gem, this time when a middle-aged farmer finds out his wife is pregnant and how things have changed since their last one was born a long time ago.
When the nurse burst in with the good news, you'd stand up and pass out cigars. Well, you can't even light a cigar in the parking lot at the hospital today.
It'd be hard to do that if you're wearing a mask, too. On the Rangeland News, an update on a lot of agriculture events and how they've been impacted by the pandemic guidelines and why more Canadian beef might be heading south.
It would make sense that we need to bring more in from outside our borders.
On the Irvin Saddles and Western Wear horse training file, a little trick I learned from the legends of Lloyd Creek that has saved a lot of wrecks. And Fred Hargrove relates what happened when he lined up a bunch of horses for a trail ride that he and Michael Martin Murphy were leading right after one of his good, pure cowboy songs.
Life out on the range might look mighty strange to some folks like you, but it's the life for me. I can't think where I'd rather be, attending them cattle till my day is through. The sun and the snow and the freezing rain, most folks think that I'm insane, or working right out in that mess. But the cattle, they depend on me to keep them watered and fed and healthy. Being out there is a living at its best. I'm riding, roping, I'm loping, doctoring, worming, and branding. When my day's work is done, I might go and have some fun, rodeoing, laughing, and dancing. Enchanted mountains stare at me, make me feel wild and free, even though I might draw short pay. And an eagle soaring overhead, behind this the brilliant sky is red. In the west I know I'll always stay. Hey, my dog barks at a coyote's howl as I look at my saddle pal. Yeah, I know that we both feel the same. We're riding under thunder clouds, lightning cracks, it sounds so loud. Once again we're caught out in the rain. We're riding, roping, we're loping, doctoring, worming, and branding. When our day's work is done, we might go and have some fun, rodeoing, laughing, and dancing. Well, I just dropped my coffee cup, trying to start this tractor up, because my truck's stuck out in the mud. Yesterday I learned who's boss. My cow horse gave me a toss, and I landed with a thud. So I live with adversity, I don't let it get to me. The cowboy life is the life I lead. Give me stars and give me space, then you'll see it on my face. The cowboy life is all I'll ever need. To be riding, roping, and loping, doctor in worming and a branding. And when my day's work is done, I might go and have some fun, rodeoing, laughing and dancing. I'll be rodeoing, ranching and dancing.
Fred Hargrove and I sat down on a sunny day in Albuquerque, New Mexico a while back, and he told me about a big adventure he had while he was the manager of Michael Martin Murphy's New Mexico ranch.
I'll tell you, we had booked in to do the Great American Cattle Drive, and it was a 3-day cattle drive, great big trophy longhorn steers on the last leg of the Chisholm Trail into Ellsworth, Kansas. I had started working on good horses for Murph and myself, and because we were on tour and we couldn't bring our own, and had some great horses lined up because Murph and I are getting long in the tooth, you know, and we're a little more delicate than we used to be, so we wanted some pretty sound horses for this deal. But somehow I drew the Strawberry Roan. His name was Johnny Red, and when I get there, I understand that Johnny Red hadn't been ridden for about 9 months, but you know, the good old owner of a horse and the kind of the trader mentality is, man, he's solid as a rock. So, and we had a pretty good ride that day, and as long as he was trailing cattle, he was a pretty good boy, but you could tell he was pretty fresh and hadn't been ridden for quite a while. Things went pretty well, but never did quite feel solid on him. And so the very next morning, Johnny and I lined up to get going down the trail and drive those cattle, and I had just swung my right leg over and really hadn't gathered those reins up quite as good as if I'd known the horse and knew what he was maybe capable of. I'd been a little more cautious and kind of had his head gathered in a little tighter, but I swung that leg over and he broke in half, went into a pretty serious bucking episode, and then went into a spin that would have made Maytag jealous. But the end of the story is, unlike the song, I actually rode him, and finally got him shut down and crawled off, and I was so dizzy I could barely stand up. But I was getting rounds of applause from all the other folks, and when it was all said and done, I let the cat out of the bag. I said, it's just amazing what a little fear will do for you when you know you got two screws holding yourself together and you're not supposed to come off a horse. It's pretty major incentive to buckle down and ride one. Okay. My saddle, it's out of Sawtooth Saddle Company. I had it custom built. Really fits me good. Got the bucking rolls on it and a little bucking strap up there in the front. And I had just enough time before he went into that spin to reach down there and grab some leather and hunkered down and never really came out of position. And that, I've come out of position quite a few times before in my life and know what can happen. And like you say, I've got the wounds to prove it.
So 2 screws holding Fred's skeleton together, and you'll find out what caused that when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Sometimes after I've gone into great detail describing some heroic cowboy deed I did, like maybe a bronc ride that I thought was impressive, or a challenging job getting the cow penned, the folks I'm telling it about will say, well, did somebody get a video? Well, no, this was way before smartphones. And when Fred Hargrove managed to stay with that horse, even though there was a big audience and cameras along, because it was being done for television.
And of course the film crew missed it, which was a shame, because I said there's not going to be any repeat performance.
Yeah, take 2. Would you start again?
I'd already retired from getting on the rank ones quite a few years ago.
Well, now you say that there's a couple of screws holding your skeleton together. What's that a result of?
That's a good horse wreck story, and I've had quite a few, but I was running a ranch in northern New Mexico, and the owner wanted to take a 2-day hunting trip up into the high San Juans up by Red Lake at about 11,000 feet. And I loaned out my 4 best horses, and kind of being the gentleman that I think I was, I decided to ride the young paint horse that was we're not quite as solid in the mind as the others. And we got there just before dusk, or we unloaded, got saddled up, headed up crossed several streams, got up in there a couple of miles, and when we came to the third stream, it was getting about close to sundown. And as anybody knows that's been up in the mountains, that's the time that the mosquitoes that you can ride on get kind of active. And we rode into what I would call an epidemic quantity of mosquitoes when we crossed a stream. They swarmed all 5 horses, and all you could see on horses' necks were solid black. And we're on the side of a pretty good mountain trail where it's, maybe 5 feet to the ground on your right and 30 feet down on the left. And I was kind of looking around, concerned for everybody else, and about that time that old paint lost his mind. He'd had enough of the mosquitoes and just broke in half up there on that side of that mountain. And I didn't get bucked off. They had one of those high-backed ranch saddles with the hard rawhide cantle.
Right, the hard cantle binding is,
yes.
yeah.
And in fact, I've been the biggest advocate of anybody buying a ranch saddle to stay away from that hard rawhide cantle binding, which really was like the spade end of a shovel, I guess you'd say. And it hit me just right, and felt my pelvis pop in the saddle. Knew I was in trouble, and he was still bucking. I thought, if I stay up here 2 more hops, I may be split clear in half like a chicken or something. So I threw my left leg over the saddle to land on the high side of the mountain. My right foot hung up in a stirrup just enough that my face was coming toward the ground, and I stuck my left hand out there to kind of block my fall, and broke my left wrist in 6 places when I hit the ground. So there I am at 11,000 feet in the boonies, and no real towns close by in that country.
And again, no cell phones yet, so we'll leave Fred up there in that precarious situation and find out how they got him rescued. And while he's waiting there, we may as well have him do another song, one that a lot of you have said you really enjoy. Well, the rescuers hopefully are on their way.
Well, I'm riding along, singing the same old cowboy songs that's been sung 100 times before. Ain't got nothing but my name. I'm the only man I know to blame. But I'm living, I'm happy, and I'm free. Just listen to the wind blow. Let it blow. Blow the sand over my trail. I got my saddle on the ground, while that old moon, he can still be found, hiding in the desert skies. The things in life, like a prairie breeze, a big stout horse between my knees, riding along, just being me. When I die, let me die, the dream in my mind, a smile on my face and no trouble behind, no cross on my grave to mark my resting place. Just listen to the wind blow. Let it blow, let it blow. The sand over my trail. Got my saddle on the ground, while that old moon, he can still be found, hiding in the desert skies. Won't you bury me with my chaps on, my 6-gun strapped to my side, so I can watch the moon hiding in the desert skies, hiding in the desert skies, hiding in the desert skies.
There's one of those great songs that just seems to roll through your mind when you're riding along. Anyway, we better take you back up that mountain trail after Fred's spectacular wreck.
I had to lay there. I guess I'd been through enough crashes and wrecks in my past that it really prepared me to handle this one, because I had to just lay there in the grass and fan mosquitoes out of my face while they went back down to camp, got a tarp, came back up, pulled aspen poles out of the forest and built a stretcher, and they carried me down the mountain. And I got to the Taos, New Mexico hospital 6 hours later, which was at midnight, and then they operated on me the next morning for both my wrist and my pelvis, and they put a titanium plate across my pelvis to pull me back together, and that's where the 2 screws are, holding me back together.
How long was it from that point until you're able to get back on a horse?
The doctor said, if things go well, that I could ride in 3 months, and it was something I'd never really want to live through again as far as a painful recovery. And of course, with the plate, the theory was that you get back up as soon as you can after that operation, start moving around again. But basically 3 months of intense pain and therapy, and kind of learning to walk. The long story made short is I was back in the saddle exactly 3 months to the day, and it was more out of cowboy pride than really feeling like I belonged there, because every little move made just sent sheer pain up through my spine area and between my legs, and I stayed in there and kept riding and gradually got better, but and I can still feel it every time I crawl in the saddle. I figured I gave up the young potential buckers.
Well, there's more stories from Fred in a little while, and coming right up, Baxter Black and the story of a middle-aged farmer and how he handled the news that his wife of many years was expecting, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan, and I'll be right back after this with a little peek at Uncle Bucker's baby.
Your land is a legacy, a challenge from those who tended it before you to build on their foundations. At Corteva Agriscience, we understand what it means to be the stewards of a legacy. We embrace the challenge of building on the foundation of Dow AgroSciences to maintain your trust, to bring new solutions, to help you care for your land. See how we can help build your legacy at rangeandpasture.com.
And for our Canadian listeners, just check Corteva.ca, the Canadian website.
I saw Uncle Bucker the other day. He's not really my uncle. That's just what everybody calls him. So I said, Uncle Bucker, I heard the news. Congratulations. A boy, huh? Yeah, he said. And at my advanced age, you can be assured that he wasn't planned. Bucker says, you're not much over 50, are you? No, but it was sure a surprise. Miss Mattie suspected something, I think. She went to the doctor completely unbeknownst to me, and come back, I was standing there in the living room, minding my own business. She marched in from the garage and stopped there on the edge of the carpet, close enough that I could see that look. You know the one. It's the same one she uses on the dog when he messes on the carpet. Well, she explained real quick that the rabbit had died, and I didn't even know he was suffering. It was such a shock, I lapsed back into my old livestock training and began to babble. "Well, you're bred," I said. "You'll begin to notice some changes in your body as the gestation progresses. Your skin'll get smoother and you might bag up a little." "Wait," she says. "Dr. Hamster told me that no matter what you say, it's not like a cow." So they shamed me into the breathing lessons, and in those days there was a special room on the delivery floor for expecting fathers, had barca-loungers, and when the nurse burst in with the good news, you'd stand up and pass out cigars. Well, you can't even light a cigar in the parking lot at the hospital today. Anyway, I think them lessons helped. My only real memory of the delivery room was the doctor looking up from the barrel of the cannon, so to speak, and asking, "Would you like to cut the cord?" Whoa! I was doubled over a folding chair in the corner, practicing my breathing, when Miss Mattie, who had other things on her mind, said no, he doesn't. But I'm doing better now that he's a little older. I was worried for a while. It looked like he was going to be a farmer. "Really?" I said. "Yep, till he was 6 months old. All he did was milk and scatter manure." This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan, brought to you by Corteva Agri-Science.
Not much can raise your stress level more than a tractor breakdown when you need it most. We've all spent hours on the phone and driving around trying to find the right parts, and that's no fun when you're missing something you need to finish the job. Here's a better way. Just go to bctractorparts.com. That's where you can find about any part for any mega tractor. If you're restoring a vintage tractor or just keeping up the maintenance on the ones you're using, you can have the parts you need in a short time. And you know what? There's some great pictures of tractor restoration projects and much more right there at bctractorparts.com. What? Oh, you don't have internet? Well, try calling Mark at 250-395-0960. Well, we are crossing our fingers and really looking forward to being at the Lido Theater in Fort St. John for a couple of shows with the Western Spirit Band, September the 18th and the 19th, along with our great friend Tom Cole. And just ahead of the Rangeland news, here's a song that Tom wrote, and I thought, you know, if this one had enough exposure, it could become a big hit. Joe Mrs. Mary.
Joe Mrs. Mary, Joe Mrs. A lot. Sometimes it's scary, but she's all that Joe's got. He keeps telling himself it's temporary. It'll be just them again. Joe misses his Mary. Joe turns on his TV set, but his mind's not there, you can bet. He walks across a dark and lonely floor. Joe turns on his radio, and the songs are soft and slow, and he spends his evening staring at the door. Joe misses Mary, Joe misses a lot. Sometimes it's scary, but she's all that Joe's got. He keeps telling himself it's temporary. It'll be just them again. Joe misses his Mary. It's been quite a while since Joe's been seen with a smile. But they say that all wounds will heal with time. Joe says a little prayer, and in the darkness there, he knows he's not alone and he'll be fine. Joe misses Mary, Joe misses a lot. Sometimes it's scary, but she's all that Joe's got. He keeps telling himself it's temporary. It'll be just them again. Joe misses his Mary. It'll be just them again. Joe misses his Mary.
The Rangeland News from the Spirit of the West. A roundup of issues and events from the world of agriculture.
Brought to you by, if you would like to be our sponsor for the Rangeland News, just let us know. We'll give you a pretty good deal. At the top of page 1, it says historically around 50% of Canada's beef production has been exported, and the biggest part of that to the U.S. And this year, the opportunity might be there for even more. Here's Gary Crawford.
The U.S. is expected to rack up a huge trade surplus in red meats this year. USDA's latest forecast is for 10.4 billion pounds of exports, 4.1 billion pounds of imports, mainly because of surging pork shipments of more than 7.5 billion pounds, projected imports only 851 million. For beef, though, looks like we'll import more than we export. Exports projected down slightly from last year to 2.9 billion pounds, imports rising to just over 3 billion. USDA economist Bart Kenner told us that for the first 8 months of the fiscal year, October through May, while pork imports were down 9%,
Beef and veal are up 11% from the previous year.
for obvious reasons.
We did have troubles with not being able to operate processing facilities at full capacity, and it would make sense that we need to bring more in from outside our borders.
But USDA is forecasting a turnaround next year and a beef trade surplus. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
The RCMP have charged 2 Saskatchewan people for trafficking in cattle in Alberta and Saskatchewan. RCMP in Lanigan, Saskatchewan, charged Monica Reby, 59, and Andre Reby, also 59, of the rural municipality of Prairie Rose after a 5-month investigation at Caprina Farms and Ranching near Jansen. According to the Mounties, a search June the 9th by Lanigan RCMP, the Alberta RCMP, the Livestock Investigation Unit of Alberta, and Livestock Services of Saskatchewan resulted in a substantial recovery of Alberta and Saskatchewan cattle, and the police allege the 2 trafficked a large number of animals. They were released with conditions and are scheduled to appear in provincial court in Humboldt, Saskatchewan on August the 24th. Meanwhile, a Texas man pleaded guilty to 5 felony charges related to hundreds of cattle thefts in Hill and Limestone counties. William Willie Rittenbaugh, a 49-year-old man from Mount Calm, was sentenced in 2 county district courts to a total of 37 years and ordered to pay a total of $588,500 in restitution to the victims. His sentencing brings to a close a long investigation led by Texas and Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association Special Ranger Marvin Wills. Marvin said cases like this serve as a good reminder that when it comes to theft prevention or recovery of stolen animals, nothing beats a good brand. A new agreement allows Canada to ship organic products to Japan now, containing poultry, beef, sheep, goat, pork, and horse meat. The 2 countries announced that as of July 16th, their 2015 agreement that recognized each other's organic certification systems now includes livestock products and processed foods containing livestock ingredients. Alberta's agriculture societies are facing a summer like no other, and there are reports that some of them might not survive. The pause button has been pressed on the fairs, the rodeos, and the other summer events at community halls and exhibition grounds. Ag societies are doing what they can, like hosting drive-in movies and markets and holding virtual concerts and shows, but it's still pretty tough. Red Deer's Westerner Park normally has upwards of 500 staff in the summer. Over 90% have temporarily been laid off, but with event cancellations, the outlook heading into the fall is a loss of about $90 million. So far, the Canadian Finals Rodeo, scheduled to run November 3rd to the 8th, has been canceled, while the fate of agri-trade is still up in the air for this year. And this is a message on Farm Fair International's website. It says at this time, Northlands is monitoring the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and the impact it could have on the show. We will make a final decision to hold or cancel Farm Fair sometime in the summer. Meanwhile, at the BC Livestock Co-op Williams Lake Yards, the District 4-H sale goes online on August the 10th, starting at 6:30 p.m. Bunch of great steers, hogs, sheep, and much more will be available, and you can get the details on how to bid. Just go to bclivestock.bc.ca. Click on the Livestock Sales button. And August the 11th at the Kamloops Yards, a special yearling sale along with a regular cattle sale and a regular cattle sale. August 13th in Williams Lake, and then August 14th in Vanderhoof. Meanwhile, at the Innisfail Auction Market, they're celebrating 65 years this month. And if you've still got any old pictures of the place, they'd love to see them, and they might use them in an up-and-coming video. You can email them to dusty_danes@hotmail.com. Regular cattle sales every Wednesday, of course, and get the details at innisfailauctionmarket.com. Okay, here's the final item. Apparently, an old man and woman had been married for years and years, and even though they hated each other, they stuck together. When they had an argument, screams and yelling could be heard deep into the night, and repeatedly a threat was heard from the old man against his wife. He said, "When I die, I will dig my way up and out of the grave to come back and haunt you for the rest of your life." And it was believed that this old man had practiced black magic and might have been responsible for missing cats and dogs and strange sounds at all hours. He was feared, and he really kind of enjoyed that respect it brought to him. Well, the old man died abruptly under strange circumstances, and the funeral had a closed casket. After the burial, the wife went straight to the local bar and started a party as if there was no tomorrow. And her actions were becoming extreme when their neighbors approached in a group to ask some questions. "Aren't you afraid? Are you concerned? Are you worried that this man who practiced black magic and said when he died he'd dig his way up and out of the grave to come back and haunt you the rest of your life?" Well, the wife put down her drink and she said, "Let the old guy dig. I had him buried upside down." I don't know where that came from. Anyway, that is the Rangeland News. Coming up on the Irvin Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, a little trick I learned while riding with the Legends of Lloyd Creek that saved a lot of wrecks, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Now, just ahead of the Irvin Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, I've got to pull this cord just to see what happens. Okay, here's an update on the next Spirit of the West cruise, and as you have probably heard, we are making some changes. We have postponed what Billy and I are calling our Farewell Spirit of the West cruise until June of 2021. Okay, Big Rig, a little banjo music, please. We still expect to have just about everything we had planned for this year in place for next year, and Jim and Karen have said, if you'd like to come, then your deposits will be held until then. We're already making plans and preparations for having the whole group start things off June 17th, 2021 with a visit to the McLennan Ranch and a concert with the Western Spirit Band. We'll have coaches to take you all from our place up the beautiful Sun Peaks for a wonderful alpine experience, and then we all head down to Vancouver. A night in the spectacular Fairmont Waterfront Hotel. Something really special planned for the next morning, and then we board Holland America's Connings Dam for a 7-day cruise up the Inside Passage to Alaska. And there'll be a lot of extra events for our group, including the famous White Pass Rail Tour. For everybody currently booked, there will be complimentary drink packages, complimentary specialty dining for one night, and shipboard gratuities will be paid for each guest. We would like to thank all of you who are planning on joining us in July and hope that you can adjust the dates and join us in 2021. We'll keep you informed with the details as they come, and as always, Megan, Jim, and Karen can give you lots of information. 1-800-530-0131.
Now it's time for the Horse Training File, brought to you by Irvine Tack and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western store.
Reality is, right now, we can't just hop on a plane and jet away, and to that I say, who cares? If you're like me, you'd rather be riding anyhow, here, there, and way up in the mountains. But first, go see my friends at Urban Tack and Western Wear. All the gear you need to saddle up and hit the trails. And hey, how about some new jeans, shirts, and boots for the ride while you're at it? Urban Tack and Western Wear, exit 305 off Highway 2 by Crossfield, Canada's largest Western store. And you know, wherever you live, you can have a lot of fun shopping online at urbansaddles.ca. Scattered around some of the corrals and the pens at the Lloyd Creek Ranch, where I proudly rode with the legends of Lloyd Creek for years, you will find little loops of baler twine at locations where we sometimes have to tie our horses. Baler twine? How come? Well, the corral posts are sure enough stout, and they'll hold a horse if he panics and sets back on the halter shank, but this leads to an interesting question. Is it better to tie a horse up to an unmovable post with an unbreakable halter and shank? Or is it better to tie him to something that will let go if the horse panics and pulls back? I guess it's a personal choice, and I don't know the exact answer for every situation for sure. Some folks would say if he's tied to the twine loop and pulls back and it breaks, won't he learn that he can get away easily if he pulls back? Well, I'll get to that in a second. But you know, a lot of us have had horses tied to something solid and seen them panic and pull back for whatever reason. And there was even a case the other day of a young horse being tied inside a round pen made up of portable steel panels. It was almost a spectacular wreck when the colt panicked and pulled back and collapsed the panels on top of himself. Personally, I think it can do more damage physically to your horse if he pulls back when he's tied to a solid post and nothing gives. Those nerves behind the pole are sensitive and they can be damaged, so it really can hurt his neck and his back. If he's tied to the loop of twine and sets back and it breaks, I think he's a lot less likely to be injured, and in my experience, horses that do this usually learn not to pull back, easier than the ones that fight the rope on a solid post. And for Urban Saddles and Western Wear, that's the Horse Training File. Oh, we had horsemen like Glenn Stewart and Jonathan Field over for happy hour the other night, and they were both looking over our horses and saying, boy, they look good, especially old Lucky. And we attribute that to that daily feeding of Hoffman's Horse Ration. You can find all about it at hoffmanshorseproducts.com. The way the Canada Revenue Agency deals with ranchers and farmers has changed a lot in the last few years, and the financial decisions we make today can have a long-lasting impact on our bottom line far into the future. It really helps to have a trusted professional who really understands your situation to guide you with all your accounting requirements and your tax preparation. Having an accountant who knows the difference between a Hereford and a heifer, what a slick and backgrounding are, and that Alfalfa and Timothy are not just names from a storybook, really helps. Kathy McMillan of PMT Chartered Professional Accountants understands the intricacies of specialized programs like Agri-Stability and Agri-Invest. She understands the demands on your time and can help you spend more time doing your job and less time dealing with endless piles of paperwork. See PMTaccountants.com or call toll-free 877-383-8081. Charlie Ewing, as many of you know, ranches on the eastern slopes of the Rockies, and in between calving and haying and riding, he writes a lot of great songs and he posts a lot of them on Facebook. This one is from his latest album and was inspired by his mother, who passed away in 2013. The Belle of Buffalo.
was the belle of Buffalo in 1947, pretty as the mist that rises from the wild Niagara Falls. A young man came to court her there, her promise it was given, and they danced by the light of the moon. She was the belle of Buffalo, her eyes like summer sky that shines above the mountains of Montana. He took her home to marry in that Rocky Mountain high, and they danced by the light of the moon. In the shadow of Chief Mountain on the plains of the Buffalo, they made a home on prairie grass where prairie flowers grow. And as the seasons circled, the Big Dipper marked the time. They danced by the light of the moon. Shadow of Chief Mountain on the plains of the Buffalo, they made a home on prairie grass where prairie flowers grow. And as the seasons circled, the Big Dipper marked the time. They danced by the light of the moon. She was the belle of Buffalo, not to return again. She lies beneath the shadow of that mountain in the wind, adopted by the prairie sky, the foothills and the plains, and she'll dance by the light of the moon. She was the belle of Buffalo, the beauty of the Avon that grows amongst the prairie grass and dances in the wind. And in the gentle breezes, when the evening star's risen, she'll dance by the light of the moon. In the shadow of Chief Mountain on the plains of the Buffalo, they made a home on prairie grass where prairie flowers grow. And as the seasons circled, the Big Dipper marked the time. They danced by the light of the moon. Buffalo girl, won't you come out tonight and dance by the light of the moon?
Boy, I just love Charlie's acoustic flat neck guitar picking there, and then that keyboard done by Ben Crane, who produced it. Oh, that's a real masterpiece, I think. Fred Hargrove had a pretty good response after he told me about that wreck that had him laid up for quite a while.
Is that the worst wreck you've endured and survived? I was going to say any you didn't survive, but that's not a legitimate question.
There's a lot my wife would say I didn't survive, mentally, but probably a few years before that, I've come off quite a few times out in some of that rough ranch country, just getting in a fix and maybe rolling off, even in the team roping arena. I team roped for like 18 years, but the one thing that I can really think of, and the surgeon even relayed it back to this incident, was I was out training a horse in my roping arena back in Kansas, and working him on the heeling end, and we were talking about Spursy earlier, Hugh, and I just like you said, I gigged him a little hard to get him up to that steer, and this old boy decided that was about enough, and he broke in half, and I ended up taking two jumps on the saddle horn before I was thrown clear over his head. landed out there in the arena, felt every vertebrae in my back crinkle all the way up, and then he was so mad he was going to try to stomp on me, and I rolled out of the way. But the surgeon said I'd actually did a little damage to that cartilage area in my pelvis then, and it was probably weak, and what led to my actual last tragedy there with a little bit of a relationship. Yeah, a little relationship. So that was one of those deals where I got back on him that day and rode him for 30 more minutes to try to straighten him out, and then realized after I got off of there how bad I was hurt, and crawled to the house and couldn't really move for 2 weeks, and there wasn't any broken bones in there, but just severe bruising and all that kind of thing.
Well, there was a lot more great stuff in that visit we had back in Albuquerque, and I sure hope to bring you more of it next week. And in the meantime, it might be a good idea to add Fred Hargrove to your prayer list. He's undergoing some serious health challenges right now, including chemo and other complications. And we'll bring in Fred's ranching partner, Michael Martin Murphy, and the late Chris Ledoux for this week's Classic Song of the West, and then Fred will be back in the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. For the Classic Song of the West this week, I figured this might work. Fred Hargrove told us about the horses he lined up when he and Michael Martin Murphy were going to be leading that celebrity cattle drive, and he said he drew the Strawberry Roan. So here's Murph along with Chris Ledoux.
I was laying around town, just spending my time, out of a job and not earning a dime, when a fella steps up and he says, I suppose that you're a bronc rider by the looks of your clothes.
Well, you figures me right, I'm a good one, I claim. Do you happen to have any bad ones to tame? He says, I got one, he's a bad one to buck. You're throwing good cowboys, he's had lots of luck.
He offers me 10 and he says, I'm your man. The bronc never lived that I cannot fan. The bronc never tried, boy, and never drew breath, that I cannot ride Daily Stars plumb to death.
Well, he says, get your saddle, and I'll give you a chance. So we hop in the buckboard and drive to the ranch. And early next morning and right after Chuck, we step out to see if this outlaw can buck.
Well, down in the horse corral, standing alone, was an old caballo Strawberry Roan. Had a little pin ears that touched at the tip. He had a big 44 brand upon his left hip.
He had spattering old legs and he had pigeon toes, little big eyes and a big Roman nose. Ewe-necked and old with a long lower jaw. Well, I can tell with one eye he's a regular outlaw.
I got the blind on him with a terrible flat. I cinched on the saddle and I girded it tight. And then I stepped on him and I pulled down the blind. Look out, boys, he's gonna unwind. He bowed his old neck and I'll say he unwound. He seemed to quit living down there on the ground. Went up to the east and came down to the west, with me in the saddle just doing my best.
Well, he's sure a frog walker and he heaves a big sigh. He only likes the wings for to be on the fly. He turns his old belly right up to the sun. He sure is a son-fishing son of a gun.
He's about the worst bronco I've seen on the range. He could turn on a nickel and give you some change. Came down on all fours, turned on his side. I don't see how I kept from losing my hide.
Well, I lost my stirrup and I lost my hat. I was pulling at a leather just blind as a bat.
With one phenomenal jump, he made a high dive and set me winding up there in the sky. I turned 40 flips and I come down to earth. Sat there cussing the day of his birth.
Well, I know that there's ponies that I cannot ride. Some of them living, they haven't all died.
But I bet you $10 ain't no man alive who can stay on old Strawberry when he makes his high dive. Yeah!
Well, that's a pretty neat arrangement, but I just kept waiting for the chorus. Oh, that strawberry roan, and they never did put it in. Anyway, for the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight, we'll bring back Fred Hargrove, and I've always loved this one about the best stress reliever in the world.
When your day seems out of balance and so many things go wrong, when people fight around you and the clock drags on so long, when some folks act like children and fill you with remorse, just go out into your pasture and wrap your arms around your horse. His gentle breath enfolds you as he watches with those eyes. He may not have a PhD, but oh, he is so wise. His head rests on your shoulder. You hug him good and tight. He puts your world in balance and makes it seem all right. Your tears will soon stop flowing. The tension will be eased. The nonsense has been lifted. You are quiet and at peace. So when you need some balance from the stresses in your day, the therapy you really need, he's out there eating hay.
Well, thanks again for making the ride, and I sure hope you'll be back here next week at the same time, and we'll do it again. And thanks, as always, to the Spirit of the West official support crew, Mark and Kathy McMillan. And if you enjoy this program, well, you will love Canadian Cowboy Country Magazine. Subscribe online at cowboycountrymagazine.com. And for the links to the YouTube version of the show and to download it as a podcast, see our website, hugh-mclennan.com. Till next week, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.